when do you want this and when do you don't? And what we don't want people to think, oh, I want the most responsive shoe all the time, right? It's a tool. It's something you might want sometime, you might not. And you actually get a great example. So I'm going to put you on the spot and go between the Zoom Victory and the Dragonfly, which one do you find more responsive? And I'm going to clarify that that's not necessarily a good thing for everything, but which one do you find more responsive of those track spikes?
Depends on the event we're looking at, but I'd probably say
I'm just going to say before we go there, overall, before we go there.
I mean, that Victory is fast.
Got it. Okay. So what I'm hearing is you got the carbon plate, you got a way more aggressive setup. Carbon plates, the plates is not everything. But what I'm hearing is way more aggressive, way more responsive from the Victory, but you're hesitating going, that's not what I would use. So what I'm hearing is
400, 800,
right?
At the longest 1500. You know, I couldn't even think of doing a 5K.
Got it. So just because something is way more responsive doesn't necessarily mean that's what you want, because shoes are tools and you got to have the right tool for the job. So why, you said it earlier, but you're going to choose the Dragonfly, which is a phenomenal spike, but it seems to be less responsive compared to this other spike. Why would you choose the less responsive of the two for what you're doing?
Yeah, I just think the profile is a little bit more forgiving. I think at the paces I'm running, a 5K is fast, but it's still a controllable pace. You know, you should be able to dictate your body a little bit more. Whereas, like, let's say in an 800, you're going out hard. You're going to finish hard. It's over in, I mean, depending on how fast you're running, less than 2 minutes. You know, like it's a quick race. There's not really that much room for changing of pace or getting in rhythm. Like, you're kind of just going with what the race gives you. The 1500 gets a little bit more of that, but it's still fast from the gun. You're still running, you know, I mean, depending what your times are going for, but you're running fast.
Yeah.
But 5K, you notice there's a pretty massive shift in tactics and how you run a 5K. And a lot of it is controlling yourself, you know, being disciplined, being strong when it gets hard. I mean, that's in every race, but like, you notice people in negative split 5Ks way more than you'll notice people with negative split 800s and 1500s. Yeah. So like, there's a way of running it. It doesn't always have to be negative split. Like, there's plenty of great ways of running 5Ks, but the point is that you can control your body a little bit more. You're a little bit more in control of what you're doing. You know, like, you kind of have a say each lap and you can kind of check in. And I think as I get a little bit more tired, or even just the pace in general, I'm not quite as aggressively striking either. Right. So I think the way the profile of that spike is, it just flows smoother at that pace for me. Yeah. And the same thing goes for the Adidas Avanti. If I was doing a track 10K tomorrow, that's probably, I would choose that over the Vaporfly, I mean, not Vaporfly, Dragonfly for myself. And so it's the same thing when you go to the roads, right? Like, what you choose for a road 5K might be different than what you choose for a half marathon versus a marathon. And it might be the same shoe for all of them. And that's great if it is. You found a shoe that responds for you, you know, like that you're a responder, right? Like we've heard this term before. And so there's definitely a subjective piece to it. But I think, you know, all the companies are doing their best to quantify what they're doing. They're coming out with pretty good product right now. I mean, I can pretty confidently say that across the board. They're all responsive poppy shoes, you know, and they all kind of have their strengths and weaknesses in different areas. And depending on the runner, they may respond to a given shoe a little bit differently and better in one company versus another, regardless of what that logo looks like.
So what I'm hearing is, again, so let's expand this, and you jumped into this on the road, because most people are going to be doing more road stuff than track, unless you're still, you know, post-collegiate or you're college or a high school athlete. Most people are going to be doing more road stuff. So what I'm hearing is, when you say a super responsive shoe, it's a tool, right? Your mechanics and your speed need to match that. There's some variations, some people can get away with that, but like a shoe that you're going to want for like a mile or 5K on the road may not be the same shoe you want for a marathon. There are some people, right? Like, good example, there's some people who love the Vaporfly and they use it for all distances. And that's great, right? But a lot of people...
You had a great example too. Was it the Reebok Float Ride Energy Pro? that you knew someone that ran marathons in that
Oh
shoe?
yeah, that's
like you
was
go
like a
rip a
3
road
point.
mile, 5K,
Yeah.
half marathon.
Yeah, that was like that 3 point. Not Reebok. Where are you with that? Come on,
super low.
It's just 3 point.
P-backs, crazy lightweight shoe.
It's like 3.9 ounces. I got to look at that.
Yeah.
But Reebok, come on, where are you guys? The guys and gals, like you had something good and it
I'm sure
disappeared.
they'll be coming. I'm sure.
All right, I'm
they'll
sure.
be coming.
All right, I will be patient. But they actually have some cool stuff coming this year.
They do.
So yeah, I knew of someone that with this super light P-back, super low to the ground, 3.9 ounce racer, which came out of the blue at that time. It was a couple years ago. Would run a mile and race marathons in the same shoe, and that's great. Most people aren't going to do that. That shoe is going to be probably out of bounds for most people, except maybe doing some short track stuff, just getting used to it. Whereas they need something with way more cushioning, way less aggressive for a marathon. Some people can handle it, but most people, a super aggressive shoe, a super responsive shoe, unless you have the mechanics and the control to handle it, is going to be better at shorter distances like 5K, 1 mile. Whereas when you go up to the marathon, you might want something totally different. That's why when people come to us asking, hey, I have this super duper shoe, I'm curious if this is going to carry me through a marathon. Like, you got to test that. If you can't handle that thing doing some of your long runs, you probably shouldn't use that on your marathon. You might want to go with a lightweight trainer or a little less aggressive shoe if you want to finish. Because just because you have the most responsive thing doesn't mean your body's going to agree with that at mile 20, right? You got to be able to control it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with training, right? So people are like, hey, why don't I train in some of these shoes all the time? You may not want that bounce and aggressiveness when you're trying to recover. And we talked about this in a previous episode where we're getting some of these super trainers that are coming out and they're great. They're super fun. They seem to make us a little less sore. But if you're someone that can't control yourself on easy days, because you need to make sure your body recovers on an easy day, that's the whole point. If you can't control that and you start picking up the pace because it feels good, you start ripping out like way too fast and easy run, then yeah, you don't need a responsive shoe. You need something that feels good, cushions you, or whether you want cushion or not, just helps you get through the mileage and recover. So that's when you're not going to want a responsive shoe. So super responsive, yeah, aggressive when you're running super fast, but when you're doing your daily miles or running easy, you're not going to want something super responsive because super responsive means more aggressive. If you can't control it and can't handle how the shoe is responding to you during those paces, you shouldn't be looking at that. So just because it's responsive doesn't mean it should be on your feet every day. Some people can handle it, some people don't.